What's going on, family? I'm Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series. I'm going to continue to examine 100 years of the greatest 150 black fighters of all times. And when you do a series like this, you have to make sure that you cross your T's and dot your I's, that the men that you have selected are worthy of being on the list. Because if you choose a man that is not worthy over a man that is, you have to justify it. And rest for sure, every last one of these men on this list are qualified. We take a look at Jack Johnson. His name was John Little Arthur. He was known as the Galveston Giant, born March 31st, 1878 in Galveston, Texas. He would die June 10th, 1946 in Raleigh, North Carolina. He stood 6 foot and weighed 185 to 221 pounds. He was managed by George Little and Tom Flanagan. He was introduced into the Boxing Hall of Fame in 1954, International Boxing Hall of Fame in 1990. Became the heavyweight champion of the world. 1908 when he defeated Tommy Burns. Become the colored heavyweight champion of the world in 1903 when he would defeat Denver Ed Martin. Faced Sam Langford in 1906. Was in the ring with Jeannette 10 times. When you look at Sam Langford, he was born March 4th, 1886 in Weymouth Falls, Nova Scotia. He died January 12th, 1956 in Cambridge, Massachusetts. He was the Boston featherweight champion, a Mexican heavyweight champion, European heavyweight champion, Australian heavyweight champion. He was a 5-time colored heavyweight champion, 1-time colored middleweight champion, 1-time black heavyweight champion. He had faced Joe Gans, who was the first black lightweight champion. The Barbados Demon, Joe Walcott, the first black welterweight champion. 1922, he would take on Theodore Tiger Flowers, who was the first black middleweight champion. 1906, he would take on Jack Johnson, who was the first black heavyweight champion. He would take on Kid Norfolk, who was the first colored light heavyweight champion. Sam Langford belongs on this list. Harry Wills, very underrated heavyweight, denied opportunities with Jack Dempsey. He be blackballed in 1926, known as a foul, when he would take on the Boston Gob, Jack Sharkey, be disqualified. And for that disqualification, they would remove him from his colored heavyweight championship title. Had nothing to do with Jack Sharkey. But that would leave room for George Godfrey. There was the Leaperville Shadow. You would have Bob Armstrong, who would become the colored heavyweight champion, when he would pick up a vacated strap left over by the Black Prince, Peter Jackson. Jackson would take the crown away from Old Chocolate, George Godfrey. Jack Blackburn would be in the ring 6 times with the great Sam Langford, 3 times with the great Dave Holly, and a few times with the great Joe Gans. He would even take on Harry Greb. Valansky became the world light heavyweight champion in 1922 when he would defeat and knock out George Compartier. He would become the first black light heavyweight champion of all times. When you look at black fighters, look at their history. You must understand the time in which they came. You must understand what was going on in their time, what they were allowed to do, what Sam Langford has gone through, what Joe Gans has gone through. How many times these men's life was threatened. You would have bricks with notes attached to them, thrown through their window the night before a fight. Sam Langford was in the back of a wagon and he saw men hanging next to a ring that he had to climb through. And he didn't know whether or not that man hanging was supposed to win or he was supposed to lose. Fought in knee-deep water. Fought in obscene conditions. Joe Gans had to take several dives. Battling Nelson many others. We don't know the true story of Jack Johnson in 1915, Cuba Havana, with Jess Willard. We do know that Jack Johnson was the greatest defensive fighter in that heavyweight division. Yes, he was knocked out by Joe Chowinski in 3 rounds. Yes, Joe Chowinski was knocked out the year before by the Barbados Demon, Joe Walcott. Jack Blackburn is not in the Hall of Fame as a fighter. He is as a trainer. Jack Blackburn would go to his grave in 1942, knowing he had the second black heavyweight champion in Joe Louis. He did not know he had the 4th black heavyweight champion in Jersey Joe Walcott, because he trained both men. Knew of one, didn't know of two. Peter Jackson had to go 61 rounds with gentleman Jim Corbett, only to become a draw, because John O'Sullivan stated that he would not give a black fighter an opportunity at his title. You see, black fighters has always suffered, never truly given the right opportunities that they were entitled to. Had to settle for less. You know that Sam Langford will walk into the ring for the last time with assistance of his trainer. He would never answer the first bell because he couldn't even see his opponent. He had to be escorted back out of the ring. Harry Wills would invest his money wisely, and he would own several apartment houses in Harlem, New York. He had a young man by the name of Harry Smith, who was known as the Harlem Thunderbolt. His family was very wealthy. They came from Jamaica, Kingston, and they would own a taxi and limousine business. But they seeked a better opportunity in New York. So they would come to America and land in Harlem, New York. And his father would carry those same skills. And he would open up a limousine and taxi cab business, own real estate, half of Harlem. 1929, Harry Smith, the Harlem Thunderbolt, would meet up with the pride of Harlem, Jack McVeigh, and he would become a colored middleweight champion of the world. His dad wanted him to become a dentist. He wanted to become a fighter. He was such a good fighter. As an amateur, he would have a record of 60-0 with 55 knockouts. Oh. He would end his career as a professional with 7 losses. But that's because of time. He didn't take the game seriously anymore. He turned on the 1928 Olympic Games for fear of being discriminated against while away from home. When you look at stories like this of what black fighters had to go through during that time. Now, we've all had our share of discrimination in every race, creed, and color. But the black fighter, his discrimination was obvious. He was treated that way because of the color of his skin. Joe Louis was in the ring in 1935 against Max Baer. And you had a ring announcer by the name of Joe Humphreys. He was very racist. And his only job that evening was to announce both Max Baer and Joe Louis. Instead, he decided to do a salute. Max Schmeling was in the audience. And the ring announcer had to take over the microphone. And he had to suggest to the audience because they were getting hostile. Because Max Baer was German, Jewish. Joe Louis was black. The ring announcer would state, regardless of creed, speaking of Joe Louis, Max Baer's religion, color, speaking of Joe Louis's skin, may we all say and mean it. May the better man emerge victorious. This is what black fighters had to hear. This is what they had to go through. When you look at fighters such as Sam McVeigh, he was born May 17, 1884. He died December 23, 1921. He stood 5 foot 10 inches. He weighed 210 and 230 pounds. And the thing about Sam McVeigh, he would be the Australian heavyweight champion. He would lose his crown and facing Sam Langford. He'd be in the ring with Joe Jeannette 3 times in 1909 alone. First and third fight would go 20 rounds. Second fight, April 17th of that year, 1909, would go 49 rounds. Joe Jeannette would go down 27 times. Sam McVeigh could not breathe, couldn't walk, couldn't stand, had a broken hand. Joe Jeannette was a mess himself. These two men would prevail, and they would fight a third fight that year. Sam McVeigh was the Mike Tyson of his time. He was a hell of a fighter. He would be in the ring with fighters such as Harry Wills 5 times, Joe Jeannette 5 times, Jeff Clark, Joplin Ghost 6 times, Sam Langford 14 times, battling Jim Johnson 14 times, Frank Craig, the Harlem Coffee Cooler, fought him in Paris, France, June 3rd, 1907. He would knock him out in 3 rounds. Be in the ring with Jack Johnson February 26, 1903, April 22nd, 1904. Fought him 3 times, 20 rounds, and he would lose to him twice. Los Angeles, once in San Francisco, California. Kid Norfolk, his name was William Ward. He would become the colored light heavyweight champion. He was born July 10th, 1893, Belmont, Virginia, and died April 15th, 1968. Be in the ring with Big Bill Tate, Ali Anderson, Jeff Clark, Jamaica Kid, Theodore Tiger Flowers, Billy Mitz and Harry Greb, and Jeff Clark. Battling Bill Tate, Jack Blackburn. Kid Norfolk would get an opportunity to fight for a title because Harry Greb wanted to give him a shot at his crown, Independence Day, and it would threaten Harry Greb and told him that if you fight this man, this black fighter, you will be arrested. I respect Harry Greb. I respect Jake LaMotta. Those are the 2 white fighters that would give multiple shots to multiple black fighters. Harry Greb would give Theodore Tiger Flowers a shot. Panama Joe Gans. Harry Greb, I have my ranked number 2 greatest fighter of all times. 45-0. 1919. And he fought in 3 different weight divisions within that year. 1922, Harry Greb would lift the America's Light Heavyweight Championship crown from Gene Tunney. Fought him a total of 5 times. And Kid Norfolk would have his wars with Lee Anderson. And that would be the first colored light heavyweight championship fight. That title was designed for Kid Norfolk because he didn't get the opportunity that he so rightly deserved against Harry Greb, who went to hell and high water to give him a shot, but he was unable to because of the threat of his own life. Harry Greb would protect Theodore Tiger Flowers the night after he would lose the crown to him. escort him to his hotel room all night, and then escort him to the train the following morning and make sure he got out of town safely. Harry Gregg just was not a one-eyed fighter who, after the incident in 1921 with Norfolk, would fight 47 more fights blind in one eye. But he was a humanitarian. And ironically, along with Theodore Tiger Flowers, he would die from eye surgery on a surgical table. Tigers died the following year, having the exact same procedure. How ironic. When you look at fighters such as Charlie Burley, who was in the ring with Holman Williams 7 times, he would win 3. Williams would win 3. And his 7th fight would be a no contest. Charlie Burley would win the colored welterweight championship belt from Coco Kid in 1938. He would win the colored middleweight championship belt from Holman Williams in 1942. He would become the California light heavyweight champion when he defeated Jack Chase. The thing with Charlie Burley, he'd have great fights with Oakland Billy Smith. There's a myth about him and Ray Robinson. They honestly want you to believe 2 black fighters would avoid each other when they were fighting under the same conditions. Ray Robinson was ranked number 1 in 1941. He began his professional career October 4th, 1940, on the undercard of Fritzy Zivic and Henry Armstrong. But in 1941, he would be ranked number 1 to fight for the clutch, Sammy Aingott's lightweight championship crown. And the New York SAC did not recognize a 19-year-old to fight for the title. They had Ray Robinson listed as a 19-year-old. He was 19 in 1940 when he turned professional. And it would be up to the fighter, the champion, who in this case would be Sammy Aingott. And Aingott said no way, and used it to his advantage, and it would then become a non-title affair. So Ray Robinson would not get his check, he would not get his shot at the lightweight championship, but he would fight him anyway, and he would defeat Sammy Aingott. New York, Madison Square Garden, 1941. He was ranked number 1. So they would send Charlie Burley to try and get a shot at Ray Robinson. 1942, Ray Robinson would become ranked number 1 in the welterweight division. There you had Freddie Ray Crane, who would defeat Fritzy Zivic for that time. Fritzy Zivic had defeated Henry Armstrong in 1940 on the debut of Ray Robinson's professional. And he would knock him out in 12 rounds the following year, Madison Square Garden. Ray Robinson at that point decided that he wanted to have a title of his own and he wanted to take on Fritzy Zivic for his idol, Henry Armstrong. And that he would do. Multiple occasions. So one day, in getting the opportunity with Fritzy Zivic, Ray Robinson and his entourage, George Langford and others, they would go over to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and meet Fritzy Zivic at a bar. And he had 2 contracts in his hand, one for Fritzy Zivic and one for Ozzie Bulldog Harris. He didn't know that Charlie Burley would show up to the restaurant. Didn't have a contract for him. And Charlie Burley would demand a fight with Ray Robinson. It was almost the same way Sugar Shane Mosley jumped into the ring when Floyd Mayweather would defeat Juan Manuel Marquez. And Ray said, "Charlie, slow down. I'm ranked number 1 in lightweight and welterweight. Why would I fight you when you're ranked number 5? You're in the top 5. Give me a chance to win this title, and then we can talk about this." Charlie Burley insisted, so Ray said, "To hell with it. If you want to fight me, you got to match this contract." He had to come up with more money that he was offering Ray Robinson. Because the amount of money that Ray Robinson was going to accept is what he was going to accept with Fizzy Divic's contract. And that's not the kind of money that Charlie Burley was looking at. So the fight didn't come off. 1942, the following year, Charlie Burley would take on Holman Williams for the colored middleweight championship belt. He would win. Now he was a middleweight. Now that conversation was over. And that's the story between those two men. Had conversations with Charlie Burley and conversations with Ray Robinson. And that rumor's been going on too long. You see, Lloyd Marshall would knock out Freddie Mills. Lloyd Marshall would be in the ring with Jimmy Bivens. He'd be in the ring with Ezra Charles. Archie Moore was in the ring with all of them. Ezra Charles defeated Archie Moore 3 times. Defeated Charlie Burley twice. Ezra Charles had defeated Archie Moore 2 times and defeated Charlie Burley twice. And he was deserving of an opportunity as a middleweight. Never got a shot. Archie Moore was a middleweight. Never got a shot. He had to fight a lot of the fighters in the West Coast. Big Boy Hughes and his brother, Shorty Hughes. Had to take on Bandit Ramiro. These were incredible fighters that are not mentioned, underrated. To your far upper corner in the left, you had a fighter by the name of Burt Llytell. And Burt Llytell used to live in Stillman's gym. My dad knew Burt Llytell. He knew Ezra Charles. He knew Sammy Baruti. He knew Bob Satterfield. Knew all them guys. Sandy Sadler. Jimmy Carter. Had conversations with Archie Moore, Holman Williams, and he told me about those guys. He watched them train. Saw Henry Armstrong shadowbox in the ring. Saw him skip rope. Saw him hit the bag. When Henry Armstrong hit the bag, the entire gym stopped and watched. Couldn't believe the stamina this man had. My dad spoke with Henry Armstrong, as I did towards the end of Armstrong's career. Well, his life. I spoke with him in 1985. He was in California. And I'm saying all this to say, the black fighter never truly had a fair shot. What shot he had to be selective with, because he only got one. And they tried to push Charlie Burley on Ray Robinson, but they wouldn't give Charlie Burley a shot themselves. He was avoided by Tony Zale. He was avoided by Georgie Abrams. He was avoided by Billy Kahn and Gus Lesnovich. As was Ezra Charles. As was Archie Moore. Archie Moore didn't get his shot with Joey Maxim to 1952. He was offered $800 Maxim would receive and demand $100,000. And Jack Kearns, who was the manager of Jack Dempsey and Mickey Walker, was also the manager of Joey Maxim. And in his contract, he did something that Don King did after that. When you signed a contract with Kearns and you defeated his fighter, you now had to be the fighter for Jack Kearns. And that's what happened in Archie Moore's career. Bojack and Ike Williams. Oh, what a series that was. Bob Montgomery will fight Ike Williams, 1947. And they would fight for the unification because Ike Williams would defeat Juan Zurita, 1945, Mexico City, knocking him out in 2 rounds. He would become the New York Sack. He would become the NBA lightweight champion of the world. And he had to run to the ring from one corner of the ring to the other corner of the ring and run to the locker room because they were throwing half-eaten sandwiches and soda bottles at him. Popcorn. And he didn't celebrate his victory in the ring, he celebrated it in the locker room, as did Marvelous Marvin Hagler did when he would be in the ring and win his title from Alan Minter. So Bob Montgomery would get his crown, the New York sack from Bojack. They fought several times. And then Ike Williams would take on Bob Montgomery in 47. He would unify. 48, he would take on Bojack, beat him half to death, 42 unanswered punches. 6-round knockout. Bob Montgomery would knock out Ike Williams. Ike Williams would knock out Bob Montgomery. Ike Williams took on Bojack 3 times, and both men would end their careers in fighting each other in 1955. Joe Louis would take on Jersey Joe Walcott, 1947, then again in 1948. He would hang up the gloves in 49, and he would appoint Jersey Joe Walcott and Ezra Charles for his crown. Had it not been for Joe Louis, Ezra Charles would have never got a shot, and Jersey Joe Walcott would have never got a shot. This is the story of the black fighter. I mean, you had so many great fighters during those years. Had a middleweight by the name of Alan Faulkner, fought out of Buffalo, New York. He was something else. Charlie Green out of California. He was something else. You had Joe Blackwood out of Philadelphia. My God, what a fighter he was. You had Detroit's O'Neal Bell, Nazi Bulldog Harris. You had Bobby Boyd, Spider Webb. All great middleweights. Bad Benny Briscoe. You see him in the 60s. I mean, when you look at fighters, such as Georgie Benton, the Philly Shell, he would be a protege, if you will, of Dave Holly, who was also from Philadelphia, who would create the shoulder roll. He would learn his craft for some great fighters. You had Reuben Hurricane Carter. Oh, what a middleweight he was. Reuben Hurricane Carter used to do 1,000 push-ups and 1,000 sit-ups when he was incarcerated. He would roll up the mattress as tight as he could, pin it against the wall, pin the mattress with his head, do neck exercises for 1 hour, neck rolls, pressing that mattress against the wall with his head, rolling his neck around. And while he was doing that, he was doing body punches and headshots as he was pinning the mattress against the wall with his head. He would backhand the concrete floor 1,000 times each. He was a massive, strong fighter, was Reuben Hurricane Carter. Emil Griffith had many conversations with him. My dad and I saw him on the train. He told us the story in the saga of the Benny Kipperette in 1962. You had fighters such as Eugene Hairston. They called him Dummy Eugene Hairston. Couldn't hear and he couldn't speak. Created an opportunity for the 10-second count, the red blinking lights, because he couldn't hear and he couldn't speak. Marvelous Marvin Hagler, Sugar Ray Leonard, Thomas the Hitman Hearns. I was at the Hagler and Hearns fight, 1985. Almost at ringside. My God, what a fight that was. Now I've seen other fights such as Alfredo Gomez and Salvador Sanchez, Danny Little Red Lopez and Salvador Sanchez, Bobby Chacon and Bazooka Lamone, Bobby Chacon and Cornelius Boza Edwards. All 3 Gotti fights. I was at the Jose Luis Castillo fight when he fought Corrales. I was at Hagler and Johnny Beast Mugabe fight. I saw Michael Dose get the smash landed to him. New York's Madison Square Garden by Donovan Razor Ruddock. I was at the Mike Tyson and Michael Spinks fight. I was at the Michael Tyson fight when he fought Reggie Green Reggie Gross, knocking him out in 2 rounds. Within 2 rounds, put him away in 1 round. It was on the undercard of Hector Camacho and Edwin El Chapo Rosario. I was at 500 fights. Met all the historians and all the fighters from the past. I'm scrapbook boxing. When you talk about black fighters, be careful. Make sure you understand the game. Make sure you understand what they've went through. These fighters today would have destroyed every fighter in heavyweight division that's fighting today because of what they've gone through. Thanks for listening. Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series. All great fights and all great fighters. Never be forgotten on my channel. Shout out to my brother Curtis Anderson. As we continue to list the greatest black fighters, 100 years, 150 of them of all times. Be well. Peace. Shout out to Obi Walker and Al Gaynor and Larry Gans, Danny Cox, Big Boy Brown, Wallace Cross, all the big men.